Welcome back to Church and State. We're talking with USA Political Correspondent McDonald Jr. In the last segment, we've been reviewing some of the promises that Donald Trump actually has delivered from his campaign in the first 5 months. Is he into now? So what else is on that list, just briefly?
Sure, very briefly. He had promised to build a border wall. Now in 2006, Congress had approved a border fence or border barrier, which was voted yay on by Obama, Schumer, Feinstein, Clinton, many other people who now oppose it. He has very much wanted to expropriate money to build this wall. The Democrats, though, are opposing him, and even some Republicans. So he's having problems. However, there's an asterisk for that. The immigrants are so afraid of Trump that in the month of April, illegal immigration dropped almost 70% across the border. So, you know, it's that old saying that the threat of force sometimes is just as bad as the use of threat.
That rings true with our experience in Australia, because our offshore detention, in other words, the incentive of a soft set of consequences when you come to Australia has been removed, and as such our illegal migration has been removed. People are now coming through the right channels, through the airports and the ways that we can deal with them and process them in an orderly and safe way. So it's interesting to see that even just a less tolerant administration has had a 70% reduction. So not a brick has been laid in the wall. Obviously he's been frustrated in that promise, but it's still had a positive effect on illegal immigration. What else?
Well, he also promised to create jobs, and the unemployment rate is the lowest it's been in 10 years. He promised to reduce regulations. He reduced regulations and saved taxpayers $84 billion so far in his administration. He also he promised to nominate a conservative to the Supreme Court. It was a separate campaign promise, but it was tied to the pro-life statements. Yes. He promised tax reform. That's in the works. They're still working on it. The problem with tax reform is the United States is so much in debt, they're afraid that, well, if we lower taxes, we won't have the revenues. But that's not really historically the way tax cuts have worked. You look at Ronald Reagan, they had tax cuts.
It's a very Keynesian perspective on economics. Yeah, and tax cuts boost government revenue.
Absolutely. You cut the tax, you give people a greater incentive to go to work, to want to earn money, and also to spend money that will generate more for the country. And so when you look over his promises, he also promised a repeal and replace on Obamacare. This is the last thing I have. You have to understand that
because he's not done this yet.
He's made steps on all of these. This man has started from day one. He works hard. I've heard reports that he works as much as 20 hours in a day. This man, from the time he wakes up, he goes to work and he's thinking about the best interests of our nation. When it comes to Obamacare, it's a sinking ship. It's the Titanic. It has struck. I don't know if I could compare it to the Titanic. It was one of the worst bills ever passed in our nation's history because it was the bill that was not read until after it was passed.
That's right.
That was Pelosi's famous statement in 2010. But having said that, a provisionary bill to repeal some parts of Obamacare was passed by the House several weeks ago by a very, very narrow majority.
What did those parts target?
Basically, they targeted the taxes. You know, Obamacare, in order to fund its provisions, required a number of taxes and penalties. And the goal of this legislation was to repeal some of those that were very oppressive to the average American. And you have to understand that Trump, you know, Trump is not conservative or liberal, really. He's a pragmatist. He's not an ideologue. And so when many of the Republicans were stumping for repeal and replace, well, it takes a 2/3 majority.
Which is going to require some cooperation from how many Democrats?
Many of them, and they're not going to do it.
That's right.
And Trump saw that. He saw it wasn't going to happen. So what he used is, in 1974, Congress passed the Congressional Budget Act, also known as budget reconciliation. And it allows Congress, under a simple majority, to make certain changes to existing law that happens to affect taxes or financing or the debt limit.
Okay.
And so it was a very wise tactic because it can't be filibustered in the Senate. And so he used that. He got it approved by the House, but some of the Senate Republicans are a little gun shy on it.
Yep.
But something must be done in order to keep that alive.
Okay, great. Now, are there any promises that you think he's made which he's not going to deliver or not going to be able to deliver other than the ones we've already discussed?
I think he's going to have perhaps a more difficult time in moving the embassy of the United States from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, simply because one of the ways that Trump is trying to maneuver a victory in the Middle East is by building an Arab NATO, building up a coalition of nations that will work with us, but that are also Muslim, to fight against ISIS. And moving the embassy to Jerusalem would be very much a sticky situation as it relates to those nations. They wouldn't be very happy about that. So I'm not sure he's going to be able to do that. I'm pro him doing that. I'm all for it. But I think he's going to kind of hide and watch and see what happens with ISIS and with these new alliances he's made. You know, he met with many leaders of the Muslim world, went on his visit to Saudi Arabia not too long ago. And they were very much excited what they heard from Donald Trump. In fact, Donald Trump was awarded the highest non-military honor that can be given a civilian when he went to Saudi Arabia, and he formed a $110 billion arms deal with them. And it was a tremendous deal in that it really restored a relationship that had been broken under Obama.
Now, what about the Democrat plan to impeach Trump? This seems to be, like we said before, the Democrats have no real plan for America. They seem singularly obsessed with get Trump and not much else going on up there in the attic. So what's the prospects of them actually securing an impeachment? Maybe you can just explain for Australian viewers, what is impeachment, what's it require, and what happens then? Is it a big deal? Because Bill Clinton was impeached but remained president.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of explain just for a moment how impeachment works. I want to read to you out of the United States Constitution, Article 2, Section 4, which defines impeachment. It's a very short statement. Yep. The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. So when we're talking about what the Democrats are wanting to do in impeaching him, you have a lack of standard here because he hasn't been convicted of anything, and he's not even under investigation for anything. But the way that this process works is any federal official, so that would include the House, that would include the Senate, that would include President, Vice President, and federal judges. First, the House of Representatives votes on impeachment. And if that impeachment is indeed, if it goes through, then they go before a trial, before the Senate. And the trial at the Senate will then determine whether they're guilty or innocent. So there's only really been 19 cases of impeachment. Most of them are federal judges. I think 10 of the 19 were successful in removing someone from office. So impeachment is something that does happen. It is rare. There have only been 2 presidents who've been successfully impeached, Andrew Johnson in the 1860s and also Bill Clinton. But neither one of them were found guilty by the Senate. So to be impeached is one standard.
Sounds like those 2 presidents got off scot-free other than a black mark on their presidential administration record.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when it comes to Donald Trump, I mean, this guy hasn't done anything. I recently watched an interview with Vladimir Putin and Megyn Kelly. They had an economic forum in Russia, and she presided over the economic forum as the moderator. And she consistently really prodded Putin as to these Russian allegations. And Putin made, of course, a logical retort, which was, show me the proof. To which Megyn Kelly, nor anyone else, has any.
That's right. There's zero evidence for that. You might as well have told me you've seen Elvis in Russia.
That's right.
It's just like, yeah, so you can say that all you like, but it doesn't make it true. Show me the evidence, otherwise shut up.
That's correct.
So let's say the Democrats get Trump impeached. They get the numbers to actually say this guy's bad character for a host of reasons. let's say they actually get the numbers to fire him and he gets removed from office for, let's say the evidence does come forward and they discover he's colluded with Russia to fix the American election or whatever else. Worst case scenario for the Republicans, what happens?
Well, the worst case scenario is the best case scenario. Republicans literally cannot lose. If Donald Trump is somehow impeached, then Pence becomes president of the United States. And that's really the last thing that the Democratic Party would want, because Pence is known as ideologically as a conservative. He has the confidence of Republicans in the Senate and in the House, and many more people would actually show up to vote for Pence than would have shown up to vote for Trump. And he would soundly defeat any Democratic candidate in 2020 that they could possibly put forward.
So the Democrats' best option for keeping Republicans to a one-term administration this time round is actually to leave Trump where he is.
Absolutely.
That's very interesting. Okay, in the next segment, we're going to have a chat with Kelly McDonald, our USA Political Correspondent, about how to be a conservative when you go to university without letting the leftist academia squeeze it out of you. Thanks for watching. If you really enjoyed that video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Have a look at this great video next, and check out the website for even more interesting articles and episodes later.